Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we'll be doing the WWE Year in Review for 2019. This will be Raw and SmackDown only. I'm not going to talk about NXT or anything like that. Purely Raw and SmackDown and the main roster pay-per-views today. So let's get right into it. It must be said, yet another terrible year for the company. 2018, that was probably the worst year in the company's history, in my opinion. I thought 2018 was absolutely god-awful. 2019, this year, it's been bad. I can't say it's been good at all, but it was worse than 2018. I'd say they're about on par with how bad they were. Coming off the heels of, in December 2018, when Triple H, Vince, Stephanie, and Shane were in the opening segment of Raw, and they promised change, fresh matchups, exciting television, giving us the power. I can't say that's delivered because the shows we've got this year have just been dreadful. So kicking us off with the agenda for today's year in review, I'm going to talk about Seth Rollins. Rollins, he's been the quote-unquote face of the company this year, and he's done an absolutely terrible job. Rollins, he started off the year with so much promise. You know, he won the Royal Rumble match. Granted, the Rumble match was hardly good, but he won it. And then he went to WrestleMania, beat Brock Lesnar in the opener to win the Universal Championship. So him as Universal Champion, there was promise there. There was hope. Maybe he could be the Universal Champion the company needed. Because after Brock was not on TV just about at all, Rollins would be on TV every week. Maybe this would be just a new great champion. Rollins, he had the match at Money in the Bank versus AJ Styles, which was incredible. That was just sensational. And then he had a 3-month feud with Baron Corbin. And, so Corbin, you'll hear about him more later in the video. He's just terrible, Baron Corbin. Him and Rollins together, I didn't love it at all. It was just bad. They had the match at Super Showdown. They had the match at Stomping Grounds. And then they had the match with Lacey and Becky also involved with Extreme Rules. Rollins and Becky versus Lacey and Baron Corbin in the main event of Extreme Rules. Are you serious, WWE? What is that? And then you had Brock cash in. Rollins then beat Brock again at SummerSlam. And I forget when exactly this was, but you should probably know if you're watching this. Rollins' promo, he did this one, sobbing promo, whether it was after Brock just brutalized him or sometime around then. He was, literally sobbing into the microphone. He was, trying to be such a sympathetic babyface. Everyone just crapped all over it. Rollins as a babyface doesn't work. He's such a natural heel, which, as we saw in these this last couple of weeks, is really what he should be. Because after SummerSlam, what happened in that Universal Championship reign for Seth Rollins? He faced the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, the hottest character in the company. And Rollins, he couldn't have looked any worse during that. Every week, the show would close in, September on Raw with the Fiend literally, in Rollins' face in the corner as Rollins is sobbing and crying. What kind of look is that for your Universal Champion face of the company? So that made Rollins look terrible. The Fiend was fantastic. And then they met at Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell, the night Bray Wyatt must have won the Universal Championship. But what did they do? A referee stoppage. Because referee stoppages and disqualifications now happen in Hell in a Cell. This company, man. So Rollins kept the Universal title. He went from being hated to everyone just wanting him off the show altogether. The night after Hell in a Cell, he wasn't even on the show. It was just bad for Rollins. From then on, it was 5 weeks of him just being hated, and then they began a heel turn, and they finally turned him heel. Now he's with the AOP. What comes of this in 2020 waits to be seen. But when you think about it, Seth Rollins, Akam Razor, what do they have in common? Akam and Razor are the hitman, I get that, but, what's their purpose? What's their why? Why, just anything. Why are they together? Is Rollins going to use them to soften up his opponent so he can win championships? Is that why? Why is it? It was never explained. The reason for Rollins' heel turn, as he explained on TV, is the fans. Which it always is with this company. It's always the fans. That's the why. It's the fans' fault. Which is so lazy and it's just pathetic. So that's Seth Rollins. That's a little discussion about him this year. I mean, if you want to go into more detail with pay-per-view after pay-per-view, good for you. But on the whole, what started off so promising with Seth Rollins as the face of the WWE in 2019, it just turned out to just be a mess. His comments on social media, Twitter especially, regarding CM Punk. That was a big story. His comments regarding Jon Moxley, AEW, Kenny Omega, all of it, it made everyone just hate him. And there's nothing the company needs worse than a face of the company who everyone hates, okay? So moving on, that's Seth Rollins. We'll just forget about him. I'm now going to talk about Kofi Kingston. Kofi, he started out this year, all guns blazing, full momentum. From after the Royal Rumble, it was Kofi Mania season. The two pay-per-views between Rumble and Mania, so Elimination Chamber and Fastlane, it was all about the rise of Kofi. Vince was screwing over Kofi. The New Day was so for Kofi. Daniel Bryan was making sure Kofi would never succeed. But that whole thing worked, and in my opinion, it was the best thing on WWE programming for the main roster in 2019. That Kofi Kingston surge of momentum heading into WrestleMania. That looking back now, I can watch back those matches, and storylines. It was good. It was really good programming. They tried to stuff it up at points, but they did what they needed to do. They made Kofi, the underdog, the baby face, so that come WrestleMania, everything was just so much more special. So at the Elimination Chamber, you had the Bryan Kofi face off for 12 minutes at the end of the Elimination Chamber match for the title. Bryan retained. And then in Fastlane, you had just Vince screw with Kofi, had the bar, destroy him in a handicap match, made sure he couldn't compete in the triple threat. And then the gauntlet match, and they did the build-up to WrestleMania. Kofi won the WWE Championship. And just like with Seth Rollins winning the Universal Championship, what happened after? What happened after WrestleMania? And that's the issue with WWE in 2019. The road to WrestleMania was good. For the most part, the storylines they were doing were good. WrestleMania delivered. WrestleMania was a damn good show this year. But what happened after? Because WWE, it's a never-ending storybook. That's why people watch it. Everything keeps going. But what happened after WrestleMania? What did we get? For Seth Rollins, it was a downhill spiral. For Kofi Kingston, it was a downhill spiral. For Becky Lynch, who I'll get into in a moment, it was a downhill spiral. All of these main champions, nothing amounted of any of this. Come the the middle of the year, they were in these nothing feuds. Everyone wanted to just end. So with Kofi Kingston, he just went on. He was on SmackDown with the WWE title, and he had matches with who? Kevin Owens was all right, I guess. Dolph Ziggler. I remember the match Kofi and Ziggler had at Stomping Grounds was just bad. It went for 20 minutes. I think it was a cage match. It was so boring. There was nothing fun about it. It was just such a bad, boring match. This is Kofi Kingston as WWE Champion. I get, maybe not every match is going to be a home run. Fair enough, I can accept that. No real champions like that anymore, where every match is incredible. But the fact of the matter is, Kofi Kingston's reign, what came of it? As I said, Kevin Owens, Dolph Ziggler, and then they did the stuff with Randy Orton, which I thought Randy would win the WWE title at SummerSlam or Clash of Champions. Nothing came of that. Kofi kept the title, which, all good. And then they rolled into SmackDown in October. The premiere on Fox, which is one of the big things about this year. In October, SmackDown moved to Fox. It was a big thing. And WWE thought it would bring about a new era in professional wrestling. It would really spark something for them. And lo and behold, anything but happened. They went to Fox. The main event for the first show on Fox, Brock Lesnar, Kofi Kingston for the Universal Championship. Sorry, the WWE Championship. Sorry, because it's such a big difference. That match, and Brock won in literally 6 seconds. 6 months of Kofi Kingston led to Brock winning in 6 seconds. And now Brock isn't even on TV. He probably won't be on TV till week 3 of 2020. This company is just unbelievable with how... there's no explanation for why that happened. Because Brock, he won the title... and then went to Saudi Arabia and had a match with Cain Velasquez, whatever, which went 2 minutes and Brock just won. Did that match need the WWE title? Could Kofi not have either won by DQ or got a roll-up or something happened? Because the way they did it, it was oh, well, Kofi just lost. And in 3 months since, what's happened with Kofi? They gave him the tag belt, and then now he's with Big E as tag champs. And he's just floundering in the mid-card of SmackDown again. Back where he was for the 10 years before this year. It's just such a letdown what they did with Kofi. And, he held the title a bit over 6 months. Wonderful, fantastic. But when I look back at this reign in totality, it was essentially the same as CM Punk's WWE Championship reign, where all the matches were just on the middle of the card. Like, they were probably some of the better matches on the pay-per-views he was on, but there was no real reason to care. None of the storylines really captivated you. Like, what was Kofi Kingston's storylines this year? The one with Kevin Owens, what was that about? Or what was they feuding over? The one with Ziggler, what was the real tension there? Ziggler saying, I deserve... What was the Ziggler phrase again? I don't even remember. I don't want to. It was like, I deserve it, one more... Whatever. So, there was the Ziggler thing. The Randy one, I'll give that credit. That was good storytelling. I like that. But regardless, that's Kofi Kingston. And then we move on to the other one I mentioned before, Becky Lynch. The same with the other two. It started out so promising. That women's division in January, February, March, it was, firing on all cylinders. Coming out of 2018, they had the Evolution pay-per-view. You had Ronda Rousey, Charlotte, Becky. They were all doing really well. They introduced the women's tag belts this year at the Elimination Chamber in that six tag team Elimination Chamber match, which wasn't a great match, but having the Boston Hug connection, Sasha and Bayley win that was cool. Ever since WrestleMania, though, those women's tag belts have meant absolutely jack all nothing. Like, seriously, they had the Iconics win. The Iconics. Personally, I think the Iconics are one of the worst acts in the company, if not the worst. When they scream, they sound like banshees being shot. It is so hard to listen to. So, the Iconics held the titles, and then what? The Kabuki Warriors eventually won. When they won, I don't know and I don't care. Like, the Iconics were off TV just about every week, even though they were the champions. And then the Kabuki Warriors won because... Why did they win? I don't know. Like, the Kabuki Warriors won. Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross had the tag titles for a little bit. And then the Kabuki Warriors won because in AEW, Riho won the women's championship. So a Japanese woman. So WWE do a reactionary move of having the Kabuki Warriors win. The company's two Japanese wrestlers win the titles. So, whatever. I'm getting sidetracked. Becky Lynch, her year started off so promising and dominant. Like, literally. That whole thing where she had the injury and then at Fastlane, she ambushed Charlotte and Ronda. And they did that through the February and March pay-per-views. And they had Becky suspended and then she came back and Charlotte was just given the WrestleMania main event because it's Charlotte Flair and she's a spoiled brat. The fact that happened, Ronda was there, Ronda's great. So they did all that. Got to the WrestleMania main event. The three women went on main event of WrestleMania, which was historic. Nothing bad to say about that. But my only issue, I said in the WrestleMania main events video, why did that match go on after midnight? There is no reason why that match should have happened at literally the next day of WrestleMania, the day after WrestleMania. Like, having Becky win was great. The match was alright, like a 3.5-star match. Like, that was literally all it was. It was probably the best women's main event we've gotten all year, given what we got in the back end. But nevertheless, it was just really underwhelming, big letdown. And on the whole, just Becky's reign in totality. Once again, I look at this in hindsight. What happened in Becky's reign? So she was Becky 2 belts for like 5 weeks, and then they went to Money in the Bank. They had Becky Lynch. She lost one of the titles. She beat Lacey Evans, and then Charlotte came out, and then they had Becky. Charlotte beat Becky, so Charlotte won the SmackDown Women's title. Then Bayley cashed in the Women's Money in the Bank, so Bayley beat Charlotte to become the new SmackDown Women's Champion. That's a mouthful and hard to get through, but regardless. So then Becky went about feuding with Lacey Evans for another 2 months. As I mentioned before, they had the Extreme Rules thing with Rollins, Corbin, Lacey. Like, that was crap. At SummerSlam, they had, Becky versus Natalya, didn't they? In the submission match, I believe. And then they proceeded to have Becky feud with Sasha, which, granted, that was the best thing, on the show in that time period. Becky, Sasha, match at Clash of Champions was good. They had the BS finish. Match at Hell in a Cell was great. Becky and Sasha and Hell in a Cell was outstanding. And then they did the women's main events, and they didn't deserve it. Survivor Series, Becky versus Bayley versus Shayna Baszler. That could have been so much more than it was. And when I look back at that match, I think, okay, I can see why they main evented with it, but it shouldn't have main evented. When you look back at that match, that was 3 stars at most. It wasn't a good match. People who tell you it was a great match, they're just high on women. It wasn't a good match. It didn't deserve a main event in hindsight. Okay? That match, it was so bland and boring, and I thought the women they shouldn't main event another show for a little while. So then, WWE, 3 weeks later, have the Kabuki Warriors versus Becky and Charlotte main event TLC in a TLC match for the women's championships, tag championships. And that match stunk the joint out as well. Now, granted, would it have been better if Kairi Sane wasn't concussed like 5 minutes in? Yes. Would it be better if Charlotte Flair didn't just literally, after she sees Kairi Sane is injured, pick her up and powerbomb her literally on her head on the floor? Would it have been better without stuff like that? Yes. But because Becky is actually a great person and had to take care of Kairi Sane, the match just became really like, it was just whatever. It was mediocre and nothing special. So, Becky Lynch this year, and the women's division as a whole this year, it was just, after WrestleMania, it wasn't good. Because Lacey Evans, she doesn't connect with the crowd. I know exactly why Vince and the higher-ups love her. Blonde, used to be in the military, tall, you can see exactly why they love her. But at the same time, she doesn't do it for the crowd. Which, she's getting a bit over with this face stuff, Lacey Evans, but when she was a heel feuding with a face, Becky Lynch, no one cared. And that was the storyline for like 2.5 months. And no one gave her stuff. That's what we got with the women's division. The Sasha Banks stuff where she returned in the Becky Lynch feud, that was the highlight of 2019. That wasn't from WrestleMania. That whole thing where they did a Clash of Champions, Hell in a Cell, that was great. Nothing bad to say about that. I thought it was fantastic. But yeah, on the whole, the women's division this year and the women's revolution, as they're so proud to tout, just wasn't good. And the fact that as at the end of 2019, they haven't done a second Evolution pay-per-view, that should show you that the women's division is nowhere near as relevant and on point as it was in 2018, okay? The Evolution pay-per-view looks like it's going to end up being a one-off, and the people asking for a second one, here's the thing. You don't see Charlotte, Becky, Sasha, the main women asking for a second Evolution pay-per-view. You see Paige, Ember Moon, those types asking for a second one because they're not getting on the show, and an Evolution pay-per-view would get them on the show. So, they haven't done another Evolution pay-per-view this year. Interesting to note. They might do one in 2020, waits to be seen, but that's that. So those are the three main stories of this year. Seth Rollins as Universal Champion and the face of the company and everything that came with that. Kofi Kingston's year, being WWE Champion for really the guts of the year. And Becky Lynch, being the main face of the women's division and everything that came with that. So now we move on to just more general discussion about the company and the brand altogether. I'll begin by talking about the worst storyline of the year. Lana, Rusev, Bob Lashley. I don't know how to put into words how bad this was. If you're watching this video, you'd be watching the current product. You'd understand just how terrible these segments have been. From the season premiere of Raw on September 30th, which I don't know why they call it a season premiere of Raw. What was different about the new season? The stage was like a slide. The stage, literally, this Raw staging, it changed to be a slide. That was what happened. And then they made Vic Joseph a commentator. That was the season premiere of Raw. Because nothing's changed with the show. It's still 3 hours of boring garbage every Monday night that makes you want to quit watching wrestling forever. So, Monday Night Raw, that stayed the same. Only on the premiere of Raw, they closed with Lana, who's Rusev's husband, making out with Bob Lashley on the stage. Which at the time I thought, this would just be a mid-card angle. No one cares. It'll go for a month. They'll have a match at the Hell in a Cell, Crown Jewel, that kind of thing. And that'll be that. Well, no. The soap opera writers who work for WWE and the creative team, they love this. They had to milk everything they could out of this. So they proceeded to have some of the absolute worst storyline segments I've ever seen. Whether it was the divorce court, where Lana was screaming about Rusev and how he's addicted to sex. And so there was that. And then you had Lana's fake pregnancy announcement in the UK, which the crowd just crapped all over. But then, because it's a tape show, Kevin Dunn in the truck edited out all the hate. So there was that segment. It's really a take your pick. There was the contract signing before TLC. That was god-awful. There's the Lana Lashley segment from Raw last week, where Lana told Lashley to tell her to propose to her. It was just garbage. The whole thing, it's gone on for 3 months, and it's not looking like it's going to stop anytime soon, because on the first Raw show of 2020, They're going to do a wedding between them. Actually, no, sorry, it's the last Raw show of this year. Whatever, I don't care. They're going to do a wedding between Bob Lashley and Lana, which, personally, I called this about a month ago. I said, they're going to do a Lana and Lashley wedding, they're going to have Rusev gate crash the wedding, and then that's going to lead to a match at the Royal Rumble, which will then mean we'll have a month's worth more of segments of this, and then Rusev will get his big win at the Rumble, and then hopefully that'll be the payoff, because God forbid this goes through February and March. We don't need a 6-month Lana, Rusev, Bob Lashley storyline. Who's asking for this? Like, as far as viewership, this isn't bringing in ratings, okay? These segments don't bring in ratings. They don't make the viewer think, oh, this show's good, I'm going to stick around through the show. What happens with this? Because it's TMZ, soap opera garbage, people watch the 3 to 4 minute clip of this on YouTube, God knows why, but people don't have life or taste now, so they'll watch the clip on YouTube, and then they'll be like, oh, WWE, Lana, Bob Lashley, Rusev, I'm into this. But they're not going to watch 3 hours of Monday Night Raw, because why would you? Okay? Lana, Rusev, Bob Lashley, this has just produced some of the absolute worst segments in the company's, in Monday Night Raw's history. Like, granted, you've had some god-awful segments across the years. In the last few years, you had Sami Zayn and Lashley's 3 sisters, which was absolutely god-awful. You've had Alexa Bliss with the Bayley This Is Your Life. That was also absolutely terrible. You've had usual Raw cringe, like that episode in 2016 for the July 4th edition where they had like a food fight, like that kind of stuff where it's just goofy. But these segments, they've made me genuinely hate wrestling, which I don't know how they managed that. So that's why, for me, Lana, Rusev, Bob Lashley, by far the worst thing on WWE programming in 2019. At a close second worst is Roman Reigns and Baron Corbin. So Roman Reigns, coming into this year, everything happened with the leukemia. I've absolutely nothing remotely negative to say about that. Joe Anoa'i having leukemia, that was awful. Like, that's a real life situation. That's not Roman Reigns, the actor on WWE programming. So felt bad for Joe there, but he came back strong. They did the 17 Shield reunions. They had like the final Shield match in the main event of Fastlane, and then had another 4 Shield reunions after that. So that's classic from WWE, but regardless, they did that with the Shield. Reigns, he was actually decent in 2019, for the most part. At WrestleMania, Reigns faced Drew McIntyre, which is a match I actually enjoyed because Drew McIntyre is someone I think is one of the best in the company. I think Drew McIntyre, I don't know what the company wants that he doesn't have. Like, he's got the size, incredibly muscular, charisma, entertaining. We saw in NXT, he was the champion there. I don't know why he's not the champion on the main roster, but nevertheless, Reigns had the match with McIntyre there, and then Reigns went into the winter months. He had the matches, some months. He had the matches with, you're just having these matches where they weren't the main event of SmackDown, but they were good stuff regardless. So Reigns had the storyline, the Shane McMahon stuff. That wasn't great, but it wasn't just him being shoehorned into the absolute main event of everything, winning every night. And then you had the stuff at SummerSlam where Reigns didn't even compete. Like that Reigns didn't compete at SummerSlam? What? So then after that, you had the stuff with Reigns as mystery attacker, which that could have been so good, but it was just a kind of botched angle. Like the forklift, scaffolding, whatever fell on Reigns. Like that was such a terribly shot angle. Like it didn't look good at all. And then you had the storyline where Bryan was saying it wasn't him, but then Rowan got involved and like a 45-year-old middle-aged man looked like Rowan, and it was just a mess. And then they had the match at Hell in a Cell with Luke Harper and Eric Rowan against Bryan and Reigns, and Bryan just went off and did his own thing after that. Like, it wasn't very good. And then Roman Reigns feuded with Baron Corbin. Corbin, this year he won King of the Ring, beat Angle in his retirement match at WrestleMania, but none of that made us really like Corbin. Like, some of the King of the Ring stuff made us think Corbin was alright, but realistically, you got these segments in November and December, and it was some of the worst television. On Monday nights, it was Lana, Rusev, Bob Lashley. On Friday nights, on Fox, it was King Corbin with his coroners, and Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode against Roman Reigns in some of the absolute worst television you'll ever see. Literally, what happened in these segments? So, you had Corbin. He cuts his promos, which are always so just vanilla and bland with his delivery, and the crowd boos because it's Corbin. He's a good heel. I'm not gonna say like that. I'm not saying anything against that. He's a good heel, but what he does, it's just not great to watch. Like he does stuff which you just think, oh, I'm gonna turn my TV off after that. For example, the dog food segment and everything that came along with that. The whole Reigns Corbin storyline. You had like the new big dog, where Reigns' music was like a chihuahua, and then like a big dog came out, like a big dog dressed as like, it was just garbage. You know, you guys know what I'm talking about. It was filth. And they did the dog food segment, which was a good way to get heel heat, yes, but is it something that, as a wrestling fan, you're watching it and you have friends, family come into the room, they see this and they go, "You watch this stuff? You're entertained by this?" Like, it's embarrassing. Watching a 6'8" man alongside Dolph Ziggler, who's oiled up, nearly naked, with long blonde hair, getting dog food cans, pouring it on Roman Reigns, smearing dog food in his face. And Reigns looking like his hands are all tied up, he's got dog food all over him. Like, what is this? This is some new generation era stuff. Like, what is that? Roman Reigns and the dog food. Like that when I look back in 2019, I'll think of Lana Rusev, Bob Lashley, Reigns and Corbin and the dog food stuff. I look back on Rollins being a terrible face in the company, the Fiend and his coming out party only to be just destroyed by Rollins, and that's about it, really. That's what I look back in 2019 as. So, rounding us out, as far as pay-per-views this year, not a great year. 2018 was much better than this year. Here's why. 2018, those pay-per-views really, like, after SummerSlam, so from Hell in a Cell through TLC, I thought those were all great pay-per-views, except Crown Jewel. That show was terrible. But I thought those pay-per-views were great. Like, Hell in a Cell, that was a great show. The first 5 matches on that card were just fantastic. I thought the other pay-per-views, Evolution was surprisingly really good. Survivor Series was really good. That show had 4 4-star matches. TLC gave us 2 5-star matches, or just about, in my opinion. Like, they had some great shows there. 2019, on the other hand, like, I look back on these shows, the big 4 shows, on the whole, delivered. Royal Rumble, if it wasn't 4 hours and 40 minutes, it would have been literally like an A show. But it went too long. You got bored. Like, the card, when you look back on it, Ronda, Sasha, 2 Royal Rumble matches, Brock versus Balor for the Universal Championship. You had, like, a bunch of other good matches on that card. Becky, Asuka, like, some really good matches. The only issue was the length. Then you roll into WrestleMania. The Mania show was actually really good. Batista's final match, he had against Triple H. You had the thing with Rollins and Lesnar. You had Reigns and McIntyre, that show. You had the women's triple threat. Like, on the whole, a pretty good show. And Styles, Randy Orton, so decent show at WrestleMania. SummerSlam, it was whatever. It didn't feel like a SummerSlam. It felt like just a B-level pay-per-view. No Roman Reigns, no real match that made you think, wow, I must see this. Like, at SummerSlam, you had Charlotte versus Trish Stratus, that was a good match, but it was nothing incredible. So that was that match. And then Survivor Series was the whole NXT Invasion thing, which I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, on the whole, that show delivered because of NXT. And then you had, obviously, 2 more shows in Saudi Arabia this year. Super Showdown in the summertime with Undertaker and Goldberg, which was a disaster. That show was just god-awful. Having Goldberg bust his head into the post and bleed everywhere in like a sloppy mess. And then you had Crown Jewel, which all people remember from Crown Jewel is, quote-unquote, Vince McMahon turning off the live feed to the show in Saudi Arabia, the plane's not taking off and being whatever they call it, a travel disaster, a mechanical failure. That was a mess. And then Cain Velasquez and Tyson Fury having matches. So Crown Jewel was a disaster. As for the B-level shows this year, Elimination Chamber, decent show, whatever. Fastlane, a really good triple threat match with Bryan, Owens, and Ali, but besides that, nothing happened. Money in the Bank, besides Rollins and Styles, that show sucked. Stomping Grounds, that shouldn't have even been a pay-per-view. There was nothing memorable on that. Extreme Rules, some people say that was the best show this year. I think you're high on something if you say that. It was a good show, I'll give you that, but it wasn't incredible. Clash of Champions, that was a one-match show, because outside of Sasha and Becky, what did we get? We got Rollins and Braun Strowman defending tag team championships for some reason. And then from there, they had a Universal title match where Rollins won. Like, that was whatever. Hell in a Cell, I didn't want to think about that show anymore. That was the Fiend and Rollins debacle, where the crowd was chanting AEW and we want refunds after the main event. And then TLC, that was good first two matches and then a disaster. So, on the whole, the pay-per-views this year, they've been really whatever. A bunch of these shows, I don't even feel like they should have been pay-per-views. Like, this year, you could have got away with doing like 5 or 6 pay-per-views. Like, main roster shows. You could have done your network specials, your Worlds Collides, your takeovers, that kind of thing, but the main roster pay-per-views, you didn't have to do 2 shows between Rumble and Mania. You could have got rid of the Elimination Chamber or Fastlane. You didn't have to do Stomping Grounds. You could have scrapped that. Like, on the whole, you could just really readjust this card. I think after SummerSlam through TLC didn't need to be a pay-per-view. You didn't need Hell in a Cell as a pay-per-view. That felt incredibly rushed. Clash of Champions wasn't very good. You need to do that. Like, the pay-per-views wasn't great this year. So that's that. Like, on the whole, 2019, when you look back on this year, the NXT Invasion angle, that was something which could have been so great, and I'm sure I'll probably do a rebooking video on it eventually, but it felt so rushed. The matches, they're booking these dream matches randomly on Raw and SmackDown, and the endings were always DQs and a brawl, which was super underwhelming. The Survivor Series show ended up being good, pretty good. I don't think it was an A show, it just wasn't. Brock and Rey Mysterio, that was good, did what it needed to do, but it could have gone longer. You could have had some more stuff from like the main event with the women's triple threat. That could have delivered more. The 2 Survivor Series 5-on-5-on-5 matches was a bit messy. Keith Lee did really well, but outside of that, Adam Cole, Pete Dunne, that was good NXT Championship match. And yeah, that was Survivor Series. So, on the whole, WWE in 2019, overall thoughts for me, I think it's another letdown year. It's another disappointing year for the company. Vince McMahon continues to get older. He's 74 now. The company is not looking to be any better in 2020 as Vince is off doing the XFL. So he'll probably be booking these shows like when he's half asleep on a plane flight across the country to these games. Like, the shows aren't going to get any better, I don't feel like. And on the whole, 2019, when you had Heyman and Eric Bischoff be the executive producers to try and save these shows, Bischoff got fired. Heyman's had no influence on Raw. Like, on the whole, 2019 is just a failure. It's another dud year for the company, which is really disappointing given how great this company could be with the amount of talent they have. But yet again, time and time again, the company just lets you down. They just do stuff which it doesn't make for good, entertaining viewing. Monday nights, they keep once again proving, just like in 2016, 17, 18, and now 2019, Monday nights are the absolute worst nights in professional wrestling. Friday nights aren't much better. The only reason it's remotely okay is because it's 2 hours instead of 3, but still a damn long time. 2019, Wednesday nights are where it's at. Mondays and Fridays and Sunday nights for pay-per-views just absolutely fall through the floor. Terrible content. And yeah, if you're still here in the video, make sure to leave a comment, like, sub. You know the drill. Any comments are appreciated, likes, all that. Thanks for watching. It's much appreciated.